Welcome to the Science of Fishing, where we deliver the latest reports and most up-to-date tactics to help you catch more fish. Each episode, we'll get into what's biting and break down exactly what you need to do to get out there and catch them up. Special thanks to Black Reef Spearfishing for sponsoring this podcast. Now, here's your host, Mark Farag.
What's going on, guys? I'm here with Capt Mike Dumas, aka Capt Mutton Mike, here in sunny South Florida. What's going on, Cap? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Like I always tell everybody, I woke up this morning, so I got nothing to complain about, you know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Capt Mike, you run a different operation than most charter operations down here, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I do. Ever since I was a teenager, I've been, kind of moonlighting and doing some private gigs on some people's boats and taking them fishing, teaching them certain trips and certain styles of fishing, everything under the sun, basically. And, a couple of years back, I just decided, to kind of go off and do that full time. Didn't really want to work for anybody else. I enjoyed working for myself. I enjoyed being my own boss. So like I said, about 5 years ago, I just decided, hey, let's skip all the other stuff, all the other mating and working on charter boats and doing the other things, and let's just focus solely on private charter. So that's what I've been doing for a while, and I'm really happy to be doing it, man. I'm really blessed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you go on other people's boats and you get
Yep.
them on fish on their boats,
We
right?
do our best, absolutely. We work with what they've got, whatever kind of boat it is, whatever number of rod holders, whatever tackle, I bring some extra stuff and we go out there and we make it happen. We do the best we can with what we've got. Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's pretty awesome that people get a chance to experience fishing on their boat as opposed to going, on a normal charter operation, which is honestly pretty unique. That's pretty sweet. So
For sure.
you do a lot of different types of trips, from going to the Bahamas to doing stuff locally here in South Florida. You do it all. I think it was a couple weeks back, you were on a sorting trip, right? And you
Yep.
guys
February
had
1st.
Yep, it was a catch of a lifetime, right?
Sure
Bluefin
was.
tuna, what was it, 584 pounds or something like that?
On the scale, it was bouncing between 582 and 587. So we'll call it,
There you go.
580.
Call it 600.
There you go. Right. I heard that. I tell my
Yeah.
clients all the time, you lie and I'll swear by
Yeah, there you go.
it.
So can you tell us about what happened? Can you just run us through what was the day like, conditions, what went down when you guys hooked that fish?
Sure, man. Well, it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful morning, pretty much slick, calm. Couldn't ask for better conditions. We had good current out there, about 3 knots of current. Wasn't too crazy. We were fishing. We got out there about 7:30, and this is prior to the change. So we were there about 15 minutes, 20 minutes after the sun came up. We made our first drift, didn't get a bite. On our second drift, we had a little fish on the jug rod, kind of all tangled up in the lights and tangled up in everything, and ended up pulling him off. So on my way back south to reset, there was a boat kind of where I wanted to be. So I just moved a little offshore where I would normally set up. And about 15 minutes into that drift, my clients were making sandwiches. I forget, they weren't really paying attention to what was going on. I'm watching the tip rod, and all of a sudden I look back where the jug is supposed to be and it's gone. So I look at the rod itself and it's line flying off the thing like if a freight train came by and got caught in it. So I'm like, all right, boys, we're kind of tight here. So ended up reeling up the tip rod as fast as we possibly could. Started following this fish around. It probably had the jug buried for, I would say, maybe a minute or two. And then just slacked us off. At this point, I'm just thinking, big sword, dresser, something, normal. Once the jug came up, got the jug off again, this fish slacked us off all the way up until about 450, 500 turns. Usually the thermocline there where you hit the warm water. At that point, this thing did not like what it felt. And over the course of probably the next 20 minutes, no exaggeration, this thing went from the bottom back up to the thermocline and back down to the bottom, no less than 4 or 5 times, moving fast. And it didn't take too long to figure out, what we had on the line, unless it was an orca, it was going to be a bluefin tuna. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I was lucky enough. This was actually my second bluefin in Miami while sword fishing. I caught one 4 years ago in June. So I had a little bit of experience with what these fish do and how they fight. I've also caught a lot of swordfish and a lot of big swordfish, and no swordfish out there do what these things do. So, pretty early on, I knew what was going on. I knew what we had. And then it was, okay, well, now what? Can we keep this thing? Can we not keep it? I knew that typically this early in the year that the recreational season is still open for trophy fish in the federal Atlantic. So, luckily for us, we were close enough to shore. Fishing Fort Lauderdale, you're about as close to the shoreline as you could possibly get when it comes to fishing for sores in South Florida. So we had phone service briefly, and I called a friend of mine, had him go online and check and double check, make sure, had him make a phone call to NOAA to make sure. And then once we got the okay, we were good to go to kill it if we had the opportunity. And luckily for us, about 2 hours later, that opportunity presented itself, and everything played out perfectly in order for us to land that fish.
That's incredible. That's probably fish of a lifetime, right? Would you say that's
I
embedded in
tell
your
you what,
mind now?
I mean, when you leave the dock in South Florida, in Miami, and you come back to the dock with an almost 600-pound bluefin, there's not many times in somebody's life that that's going to happen.
Yeah, even a 600-pound sword, you're looking for that nickel,
Oh,
and
yeah,
you get a
even less
600-pound
time.
bluefin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's going to happen probably even less than a bluefin. Like I said, I've caught two
yeah,
bluefins. I've never caught a 600-pound sword.
right. What
So,
was what was the how big was the other bluefin that you had caught?
well, we don't really know. We measured it. It was 95 inches from the lower jaw to the
Okay,
fork of the tail. Because it was
right.
in June, we weren't allowed to keep it. Unfortunately, the fish came up dead, died about 2.5 hours into the fight. So we got it up to the boat. I got video of it coming up, stone cold.
Yeah,
We took a couple pictures of it, and then just watch it sink away, unfortunately. But,
yeah. I mean, it
it was
happens.
probably, if I had to guess, it's probably 400 pounds or so.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, the one that you just recently caught, would you say that's the largest fish that you've caught, or
Uh,
what
you know,
rivals that?
it's definitely the largest fish I put on a scale. Let's put it that
Okay,
way.
yeah,
I've gotten a 526-pound sword that we put on a scale.
nice.
And then we've caught in the charter industry, we've caught lots of very large sharks,
Yeah,
um, but none that I could say with confidence. I mean, a lot of people overestimate that stuff. None that I could say with confidence were over 600 pounds.
right.
A lot of
I
400
gotcha.
pounders, a lot of big fish, but that was probably the biggest for sure.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
do you have any other stories that rival this one? Something as crazy as this? Anything come to mind?
Well, I think the craziest was actually going back to the other bluefin.
Okay,
And so what happened was, again, I was on a sword trip, and I'd probably been fishing for about 3 or 4 hours. We didn't have a bite. And I remembered that the day before, I just happened to remember that my buddy had caught a bluefin, the day before out there fishing in the same area. And I have to keep in mind, I have 3 witnesses to this story. So, we're out there fishing. A couple hours have gone by. We haven't got a bite. And I remember that my buddy had caught a bluefin. So we're sitting there, and I look up to the sky and I say out loud, sword guys, if you're not going to give me a swordfish, at least give me a bluefin bite. Just this is the first time I said this in my life. First time that ever the words came out of my mouth while I was sword fishing. You never say that or even imagine that that's going to happen, right?
yeah,
30 seconds later, the rod loads up and the fish takes off. Crazy head shakes, 500 yards of line in 30 seconds. And I look at my clients and I'm like, you are not going to believe this, but Lord just answered our question and gave us a bluefin tuna. And 2.5 hours later, when that thing came up, we saw that that was the case. But to actually ask for it, which is crazy enough as it is, and then to have it happen 30 seconds later was one of those things where, you ask and you shall receive. You know what I
for
mean?
sure.
Because, who does that? Just pure luck.
That's crazy. That is
Yeah, but
awesome.
that's about as crazy. I mean, we've caught all kinds of big fish, caught all kinds of cool stuff. But as far as the craziest story, to ask for a bluefin tuna in South Florida and to get one a minute later, less than a minute later, was the ultimate for me. Still to this day, people ask me what the craziest thing that ever happened. That's my story. That's the craziest
Yeah.
thing that ever
Well, that's sweet. Can I ask you a question? And you don't have to tell us,
happened.
but
Yeah.
can you tell us what baits you were using on both those trips? people are trying to figure out how to catch these things?
The first one ate like a swimmer, what I call a swimmer, or what people call a taco. It's basically
Okay.
like the side of a bonita, trimmed down real thin and folded over and cut and sewn up. And then the second one ate an eel.
Okay.
And the first
So
one
that's
ate on
kind of
the,
like,
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say the first one ate the tip rod, and then this one recently ate the jug rod.
Right, right. So that I was gonna say that the eel, that's kind of like the Northeast because they feed on those things up in New York and in the canyons and stuff like that. Sometimes they get into the eels and whatnot because that's super prevalent. So that's interesting that it ate an eel down here.
Well, the eel that we're using is a freshwater eel.
Okay.
So the swords aren't particularly eating that specific eel, but a lot of
Right.
their forage and a lot of the food that they eat, especially this time of year, the stuff that I find in their stomachs, all stuff that mimics an eel, about the same length, shape. They're dark in color, so very, very similar to what those eels look like. And personally, I believe that as long as it's moving, with the attitude that those fish have, they kind of will almost eat anything as long as, like I said, it's not spinning and and when they whack it, it doesn't fall to pieces and start acting all funny. As long as it stays held together and keeps swimming away from them and triggers that reaction for them to eat it, usually they'll eat it regardless of what it is.
Right. Right. So you do a lot of those trips. You also do a lot of the Bahamas trips, right? You go and catch those queen snappers. I see a lot of those on your page, right? Can you
We
tell
do
us
a
a
lot
little
of
bit about that?
Yeah, a lot of queens in the Bahamas, a lot of queens in the Keys, certain times of the year. I love deep dropping, so it's one of my passions. I feel like it can be technical. You're trying to put your bait right in a small spot, through a lot of current and a lot of water to get to a specific place. So for me, it's a little more challenging than just say putting out some flat lines or putting out a trolling spread or putting the kites up or something like that. So I enjoy that a lot. Queens are probably, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful fish that there are in the ocean. I mean, that candy
Absolutely.
apple red will get you fired up. I'll tell you what, if you like bottom fish and you like that kind of stuff, it's hard to beat a big queen snapper. And on top of all that, they're really good to eat. So, they're a win-win-win all around. Fun to fish for, fun to catch, and then fun to eat. So I love
For
those
sure.
things for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So going back a little in time, how did you get into fishing? Before your charter days, before all that, what was your introduction to fishing?
My father, my father got me started, ever since the day I could walk. He really enjoyed fishing, and he worked down at the Castaways docks, for a few years before he decided that he didn't want to really fish for a living and he wanted to do something else. He got into construction and he wanted to fish for fun with me, as opposed to fish for a living. So, but he's always had it in his blood. He's a Florida boy born and raised. He's been fishing since he was a kid. And, he got me, like I said, he got me started since I could walk. And shoot, ever since I was probably 6 or 7 years old, we went fishing every Saturday, every Sunday, come hell or high water, rain, sleet, snow, didn't matter the weather. We were out on the reef catching gogs and pilchards in the dark. And we usually fished until the sun went down. And that was every Saturday and every Sunday from the time I was 6 until the time I was probably 16 or 17 years old.
That's awesome. So it's in your blood.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. It's an addiction. It's a passion for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So after that, you went on to do your own thing. Did you go straight into charter fishing right after, when you got of that age? Or did you
No,
do
I,
something
I
else
I
before?
went into sales when I graduated high school. I got out of high school. I did a couple sales jobs. I also thought at a younger age that I didn't want to fish for a living. I figured that I might get burnt out doing it. So for there was a long time where I didn't fish at all, except for fun.
Yeah.
But then at about 24, 25, I got into charter boat fishing, and I worked for some of the best guys down here. I mean, if they got a name down here, and I probably fished with them. So I did that for a long time, and then, like I said, about 5 years ago, I just decided, hey, time to go off on your own. Do your own thing, fish for what you want to fish for and what you like to fish for, and your clients like to fish for. Because the charter fishing was fun. It was always new people. You had cool groups, but it was kind of monotonous. A lot of trolling, shark fishing, fishing for AJs and stuff. And, it just got old after doing it for 10, 12 years, so I just wanted
Right.
to kind of branch off and do some other stuff. And again,
Sure.
just kind of be my own boss and not have to depend on anybody else to book trips for me and stuff. So that's how I ended up
Right.
doing all that.
Right. Right. So now you do all those trips. You got deep dropping, sorting, running and gunning. You do it all,
I
right?
tell you what, if it swims out there, we can go catch it and kill it, or catch it and release it, or do whatever you want to do. I'm just not the biggest marlin guy.
Right.
We didn't have much marlin fishing growing up down here in South Florida, so I didn't do much of it. So I'm not really versed on a lot of that. But yellowfin tuna in the Bahamas, wahoo, deep dropping, yellowtailing, whatever it may be. If it, like I said, if it exists out here, we do it. Kite fishing, trolling planers, whatever somebody wants to learn how to do. Like I said, aside from catching big marlin, I can take them to do it.
That's sweet. What would you say is your most popular trip? What do people charter you out the most or hire you the most for?
Probably to do bottom fishing, muttons,
Yeah.
groupers. I'm real proficient at fishing some deep wrecks, and I like that style of fishing. So we got pretty good at that over the years. Ways to fish the wrecks, when to fish the wrecks, so on and so forth. So that's probably what I get booked to do the most of. But again, a lot of it is just based on the time of year, what's biting then. A lot of my clients have been with me for a couple years now. 95% of them are all repeat. So we're at the point to where it's like they don't tell me, hey, I want to go do this today, or I want to go do that. They just ask me, hey, what do you kind of recommend? And then we kind of look at weather, and then we choose between a couple options and we go do that. But a lot of the reef, a lot of the wreck, a lot of deep drop trips, a lot of sword stuff. But definitely mostly the bottom fishing.
That's
Muttons,
awesome.
grouper. One of
Right.
my favorite styles of fishing too. I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy those types of fishing a lot.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I love going to catch those muttons, going down for the groupers, a long leader, doing the whole thing.
Yep.
I know what you're
Yep.
talking about. Absolutely. So,
Yeah. Only thing that sucks these days is, man, before you used to have to just worry about catching the fish. Now you got to worry about a Goliath not eating it or a shark not eating it. And so it can be a little frustrating certain days when you feed, 3/4 of the fish that you hook to the sharks or the Goliaths. But still, I love doing it every day. So
you think that's a problem right now that needs to be, addressed?
tell you what, I've been doing this kind of fishing that we're discussing for a lot of years. And the last probably 3 years, it gets exponentially worse every year because a lot of these wrecks get these Goliaths on them, and they pretty much don't leave. So you got these Goliaths that get trained just like the sharks get trained to know that boats equal opportunities to eat food. So whereas before sharks felt humans meant they got killed, or it was bad to be around people. Not anymore. Now they're not in danger from us. So for the most part, they just, like I said, they're trained, man. They know that boats mean opportunities to eat. So it's gotten tough. It definitely has gotten tough. I mean, it sucks when you pull up to the spot and you anchor up and you're 400 feet off the wreck, and immediately all you start marking is big halos sitting right under your boat 100 feet down, and you're like, well, kind of screwed. I mean, let's see if we can get anything past these things. But lots
Yeah.
of times they're just on you the second you get there.
Right.
It's tough.
Right. No, I get you. So do you use do you use Seymour Maps and those types of programs to help you
I
out?
do. I do. I use Seymour Maps pretty much mainly exclusively here, at least on the East Coast in South Florida. They've got that resolution pretty much dialed in. Their maps are pretty clear. They've got some of the most coverage. I've been with them for a while now, for probably over 3 years, as one of my sponsors. Um,
Awesome.
but yeah, it's an it doesn't hurt. It's a great advantage to have it. Just because you have it doesn't mean you're going to catch a lot of fish, but it's definitely going to give you a lot better opportunities to find stuff a little easier, and to also, it gives you a good opportunity to know exactly where you are in relationship to whatever it is that you're trying to fish, while you're
Right.
doing it, which is a huge advantage, especially if you're, wreck fishing or deep dropping. Definitely helps a lot. And it helps a lot with the pelagic stuff too, because now where all the bottom structure is, where all your wrecks are, where all your hills are, your drop offs, your ledges, things that are going to hold bait, which are also going to hold pelagics as well. So it's a huge advantage to have. It's just,
Hmm.
one of those things that once you get it, you still have to do some work dialing in, because now you have a very large percentage of the water open to what, you can see what's down on the bottom. So it's almost like too much information at times. It's like, oh my God,
Right.
what piece of structure do I fish? What drop off do I go look at?
Yeah.
But, it is a major advantage for sure.
Sure. Sure. That's awesome. You also
Yeah.
you're sponsored by Gulfstream Rods, right? They're a good
Gulfstream
rod
Custom
builder, right?
Rod, yeah, yeah, Bluefin
Yeah,
USA and Bait Masters as well.
that's awesome.
But Gulfstream rods, in fishing, right? And I grew up believing all this. You can only do so much. There's only so much control that you have. There's only so much you can do. Besides, once you get to the point where you're putting your bait in the water, you lose a lot of control with certain types of fishing. So when it comes to the things you can control, my philosophy is make sure it's perfect.
Right.
Your knots, your hook, make sure it's sharp. All your rigging, your reel, make sure it's got good line on it. Make sure your rod has good guides, don't have any chips in the guides. Make sure you're using some of the best equipment because these guys spend a lot of money on boats. They spend a lot of money on equipment. They spend a lot of money on bait, a lot of money on fuel. And to go out there and fish with mediocre tackle doesn't really make much sense to me. You're going to end up
Right.
losing fish that you want to catch. Sure, you're going to catch some fish if you got not the best tackle, but when you hook that fish you really want to catch, chances are, something's going to happen.
Right.
Line's going to fail, or reel's going to fail, or something. Rod might break. So if you can control certain things, you better control them to the best of your ability. And one of the things I believe in is using the best rods and reels you can possibly use, and that's what led me to Gulfstream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I got a little bit of a different question for you, all right?
Sure.
Most guys want to get out there and they want to go and get on charter boats and start fishing, but you do a little bit differently. You do the captain for hire type thing. How would you say someone should get introduced or start up to get into that position that you're in now? Do you think they should start on charter boats, or do you think,
100%.
how does one? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you should start, fishing with other experienced captains, doing, different types of fishing. So you learn, the trolling, you learn the live baiting, you learn different types of rigging, you learn all these things. And like I said, I learned from some of the best guys down here in South Florida, and it's a big factor. If I was to go and try to figure all this stuff out on my own, it'd take me 60 years as opposed to taking me 30, because I
Mhm.
learned from some of the best guys out there and I have a lot of my own experience. So, learning from as many people as you can, fishing as many different types of fishing as you can, is definitely my recommendation. Just starting out, unless you're a well-seasoned fisherman and you've done it your whole life, and you're great at you're proficient at certain things. I would recommend trying to learn as much as you can, for sure. And then, like any other business, start, where you can, and just try to grow it as fast as you can in the best way possible, whether it's social media or using the internet or paid advertisements or whatever you can do, you know, do that. And then also, what's very important is being good with your customers too, being personable, and then putting your people on fish too. There's a big difference between saying you're going to go out there and teach them stuff and then going out there and actually teaching them stuff.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, Kat, I really appreciate you taking the time today. This was a pleasure speaking with you. That
Thanks
bluefin,
for having me.
congratulations on that. It's been amazing to see what's going on, and I watch you every day on social media, and it's just awesome to see you out there.
I
Good
appreciate
luck
that.
fishing out there, Kat. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, man. Thank you for having me on the show. I look forward to seeing the episode online, and I'd love to be back on one of these days if we got some more stuff to talk about.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Science of Fishing. We hope that this was helpful and you learned something for the next time you're wetting a line. Follow us on Instagram at Science of Fishing, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes and share this with someone you know. Until next time.